Hey, Devin. Yes, I am. And I wish you folks could capture or could see what has been happening behind the scenes because we've been reconnecting with so many fellow Bright kids across the world, around the world, living their dream. And it's been so much fun checking in and, recharging our memories of how we all first met and how we first met Mr. Bright. So let's welcome back to the virtual stage, Danny, Jack, Matt, and JB. Hi, everybody.
Hey,
Aloha.
aloha.
So cool to see everybody.
How's it going?
Good.
Hello.
So I'm sure audiences know your faces and your voices very well, but just for fun, why don't we go around? We'll start with Danny. Introduce yourselves. Tell us where you're calling in from, and also when did you officially become a Bright Kid? What year?
My name is Daniel Bolin. I'm calling in from Pasadena, California. I graduated from Castle in 1987, but joined the theater program late in 1985.
Awesome. That's great. Jack, let's kick it to you.
Woo! Hi, I'm Jack, formerly known as Debbie Parker. That might confuse some people. On a cruise ship contract, somebody else was named Debbie. And so I just embraced the opportunity to change my name because let's face it, I really wanted to change my name from Deborah to Jacqueline because my father's name is Jack and my mother's middle name is Lynn. It sounded like a great stage name. And then I never went back and I legally changed the name. So if you've been trying to find me, I'm the old Debbie Parker.
Your
And
search is over. Here it is.
Cougar.
And what year did you become a Bright Kid?
Way back in 1977. I actually was 7 years old, and Donnie Sager, if anybody can remember Donnie, he brought me to his audition for The Sound of Music. And so I went with him, and we went to the AV room at Castle High School, and this radiant, loving beam of a man, Mr. Bright, was sitting at the piano, and at the end of the audition, he said, "Hey, could you do me a favor?" And I was like, "Sure." "Oh, can you sit next to me?" "Okay." So I sat next to him and he says, "Can you sing this line?" I said, "Okay." So he said, "The sun has gone to bed and so must I. Goodbye, goodbye, goodbye." And so I sang it. And the victory in this man's eyes, I knew at that moment that I had Papa around me. And I've been with him ever since. Yeah.
That's
so that was
wonderful. I love that. And a star was born.
Yeah.
JB, all the way in Japan. I just gave two of the pieces I asked of information that I asked. But why don't you introduce yourself and do all the things for us?
Okay, disclaimer, I'm JB and I'm calling from Japan. I'm in Osaka. And I have been a Bright Kid since 1980 when Mr. Bright did his first show at the theater on the Castle property, West Side Story. And I wasn't cast originally, but I hung around and got in everybody's way. And finally, he created a role in the show for me.
Oh, yes. I love that. I also wasn't cast in a play before from Mr. Bright, and it broke my heart, but it taught me so much. So
yeah.
Well, so we're there. We're the Broken Hearts Club.
I was signed up for a theater craft class that summer at Castle, so he just canceled the class and had us work backstage. And as I worked and played piano and stood in for people who couldn't be at rehearsal, he finally just created a role for me, which was the highlight of my life.
Love that. Oh, I love that. Now, all the way in California, also northern. Hi, Matthew. We have a lot of history.
Hello.
We've done lots of Mr. B productions together starting in middle school. Tell us your name. I've again said everything, but just do all the stuff for us just for fun.
Hi. Yes, you know me very, very well, Kimmy. You actually emceed my wedding. I'm in California for the office shutdown, although I do live in New York City now. My name is Matt Tinker. The very first show I ever saw was The Wiz in 1985 at Castle. I told you before, my babysitter was the Wicked Witch, Andrea Lakin. And then my first show with Mr. B, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, Kimmy, but Let's Go to the Movies was 1992. 1982.
Sure.
It was in
I
the
don't
it
know.
was in
I
the
don't
elementary
remember.
school theater.
Oh
Yeah,
yes,
the
yes,
theater
I
school
do
productions.
remember.
Yes,
Yes, I
it
don't
was the
remember the
kids
year
review.
because maybe
Yes,
that's something I don't reveal myself. But yes, I do remember the show. Now, Matt, you've
yes,
had such a fun journey, of course. From being a professional
yeah.
performer in New York, in Los Angeles, in Europe, and now you've kind of crossed over to the corporate world with your position at Facebook, which is so cool. I'm
Yes.
sure. Have you guys heard of Facebook? I have. Look me up. But how
It's
has
this little
Mr.
app no one's
Yeah, this little
ever heard
app. Yeah,
about.
maybe
Yeah.
check it out. But how has your experience with Mr. Bright kind of affected how you performed on stage? And also, is there anything that you've taken into the corporate world from him that has helped your career?
Yes, definitely. The thing that comes to mind for me, and I'll paraphrase, I won't quote Mr. Bright here, but it's to do everything with greatness. So even if you're sweeping and mopping the stage before a show, or you're posting flyers at Windward City Shopping Center with your friends for a show you're in, no matter how big or small the part is, do it to the best of your ability. And I've
Mm-hmm.
really taken that into the corporate world, which was a long journey for me, because I did dance professionally for 20 years, and I, worked my way up through the ranks as a dance captain, choreographer, got into
Yeah.
casting, and that's kind of how I got into the corporate side of things. And now I'm in technology. And just to know that like every single thing you do should be done well and with excellence has really set me up for success in the corporate world.
Oh my gosh, I love that so much. And that's so true because not all bright kids have gone into performing. So many of us have our teachers, our leaders, are just not, but we've taken what we've learned on stage into these worlds. Now, Danny, speaking of everybody being excellent, Mr. Bright is always very clear about how everybody has an important role in the shows. Nobody is a star. And for you now working as a producer, an Emmy Award, I don't know if anybody can see the accessory behind him, but he does have an Emmy, probably several, for his work on The Voice and such. So can you tell us a little bit about how you started with Mr. B and when did you know that this was something that you wanted to do professionally?
Well, I started acting actually. I wanted to act, and I got there, and I in 1985 tried out and got into one of the smaller plays that he took around to the elementary schools, the Saga Sagebrush Sal, where I played
Mm.
a the loony priest, I believe was my title. And then that was the fall production, and then the spring production was Gypsy, which I did with Jacqueline.
Love
And
it.
then after that, that was in '87, I think. Anyway, uh, during that one, I just was helping backstage a lot. I would just come after school and build sets and hang lights, and just working with those guys and trying to, uh, just get the thing moving forward, as it were.
Hmm.
And after I graduated, Mr. Bright sort of just kept calling me and my friend Calvin and my friend James. And he's like, "Hey, there's this company coming in, a dance company. They just need somebody to turn the lights on and somebody to run the sound and somebody to manage the stage. Are you guys available?" Yeah, okay. And then he just kept calling, and we just kept going in there. And because you have the performers all on the stage in the front, but you got to have somebody in the back running it.
Oh,
And
100%.
Castle Theater never had a production stage manager of any type. It was just whoever was available, right, for years.
Wow, I love
And so
that.
we did it. We just kept doing it. Mr. Bright kept calling, and
And
I did
here
it
you
until
are.
'93 when I said, you know what, I'm gonna try and do this professionally now. When
Amazing.
came to California.
And here you are. That's so great. And I think what I love about
Yeah,
that too is, like you said, you started on stage and then from with Mr. Bright believing in you and seeing that spark in you, see that connection, spark light,
yeah.
that
It
you
was
start, also that you started small, right? Like you say, oh, we just needed to turn on the lights, but now it's become your journey, become your career. That's so wonderful.
well, I don't know. I wasn't the world's greatest actor, that's for sure. But when I got backstage, there was those moments where they'd be like, you're pretty good at that, Dan. You kind of have an eye for this. And I
Oh,
just go, okay, well, maybe that is my journey.
Oh, I love that. I love that. Thank you so much for sharing that. I love that I'm learning so much about all of
Yeah.
you folks too. Now, speaking of
Yeah.
lights, Jack, you are up in the one of the flashiest cities in the country, Las Vegas. Yes,
Yes. Yes.
yes. Now, I've never
Yes.
been yes, yes. I've never been a performer in Las Vegas, but I feel like it's probably maybe just a little different from when we were doing stuff in Kaneohe. Maybe just a little. Um,
You know, it is a little bit different, but I want to tell the world this. I've wanted to tell the world this for a long, long time. I think those of us who were so blessed and so lucky to grow up in the Bright Theater. You know, I was there in the AV room before the auditorium was built. So
hmm,
when it was built, it became like our house. And everything that we had learned up to this house being built, it's like we all had this unique position to keep our house well. And so there was an integrity intact, there was work ethic intact. It was an honor to work on the sets. And Danny, you would probably hate me, but I couldn't even draw a sick man at the time. But I was there doing sets. And that's the thing that we all take away from this is I remember auditioning for Mamma Mia, and they said, you know, yeah, you'll never be the lead of the show. And I was totally okay. I was totally okay with that. So I read with different partners in LA, and can I get you water? Do you want me to sweep the floor? I mean, that's how we were all brought up, is we did everything. And so we're all so lucky that we worked in this professional environment in this state of the art building. We
hmm,
had Sandy, we had Tony McCall,
hmm.
um, you know, and so we all had this integrity and work ethic that we have carried, that I have carried in all the productions that we've done out here. And I'm here to tell you that our Castle High School productions sometimes to this day blow some of the productions that I've worked on out here
Mm.
out of the water. You know, big shows like Effects and Mamma Mia, you know, but it was still the same sort of state of the art, integrity intact,
Yep.
professional, you know, shows. And I want to share real quick that in Effects on my opening night, JB will love this story too. Um, I hear, you know, places, and it's Tony McCall. By God, he was the technical director at Castle, and now he was our technical director at MGM when I was opposite Rick
Oh,
Springfield, and he came
wow.
down to visit me my opening night, and he was like, Debbie, and wrapped his arms. So the thing is, while we're all these miles apart, I think what keeps us all together is Mr. Bright's integrity and ethic and heart and light. And I know I've probably taken way too much time, but I'm
Oh,
just
but it's so
bursting at the
beautiful.
seams
Yes.
to share exactly what we have been so lucky to take away. And it's our responsibility. This is how I stay grounded here, is just remembering everything that he taught us and remembering that
Yes.
that's our center and that's our compass and that's
Yes.
our light. And we will never lose it because we all have it together and we champion each other and we
Yeah.
have this family that we will always have. And in any production or television show or whatever, we're always going to be those people that people say,
Yes. We'll
wow,
always be bright
they
kids.
about
We'll
you.
always be
Right.
bright kids.
Mhm. Yeah.
And
You
it's
know?
him, and it's him here. And I'm so glad that we can all be here together and share
Oh.
that. I've just been dying to because it means so much to me. Anyway, I've
Yes,
talked too.
yeah. No, but it's hard not to keep talking
Yeah.
about Mr. Bright because like we're talking about how long
Mhm.
we've known this man and how much he's affected our lives and really been such a huge part of our career. And you talk about light, you know,
Yeah.
and that's that thing inside of us. Now JB, you have been in Japan for a really, really long time as a casting director at Universal Studios. And I think one of Mr. Bright's talents too is finding that special something in somebody and also getting it out of them. How has working with Mr. Bright affected your role as a casting director?
I think one of the things I walked away from, and I worked with Mr. Bright in on the other side of the table only towards the end of my journey in Hawaii. Uh, I was always a performer, and then was transitioning to being on the other side of the table.
Hmm.
So, like in Big River and um, a couple of the other shows towards the end of my time in Hawaii, I got to work with Mr. Bright behind, in the casting realm and as musical director and such. And I think my biggest big takeaways from working with him are just finding people who are passionate about what they're doing. And when someone walks on that stage and they deliver an audition and they're in it to win it, and they put themselves in the middle of that song or monologue and emanate it, that's the person who needs to get this role. And they're not just phoning it in. And that's what I find helps me a lot when I'm on the road. And it's not always the person who obviously walks in the door and looks the role. It's the person who becomes the role.
Yeah, and I think, Mr. Bright was very good about surrounding his productions or casting his productions backstage, on stage, in the front of the house with good people. That was such a big thing for him because it was a team, it was a family all the time. And I think we hear that through all of these stories. So it's so awesome to hear. Now, before we wrap up, we are coming to the end of this moment for now. But, all of us know Mr. Bright's motto or his big tagline of believe in yourself, which is something we've carried with us. But starting with you, JB, and then working our way backwards, is there like one piece of advice that Mr. Bright gave you personally that has stuck with you?
Ooh, I get to go first this time.
Yes.
He always said there are no stars. There are no stars. We are a team, we are a family, and there are no stars. And I remember the first show when we did West Side Story and we did the curtain call, and it was the end of a death scene is what ends the show. And so we came out and
Spoiler
we didn't
alert.
come out, like this. Yeah, right. Sorry. But we came out and we did our bows, and it was, a beautiful, a slight somber, but beautiful moment that didn't, glamorize the story that we just told.
Right.
And it was my first production of anything ever. And I said, "Oh, so Mr. Bright, can I blow kisses?" Very, very.
I like that you asked
he's
first.
Like,
good job.
Well, yeah. Thankfully I did. And he's like, "Well, no. No." And he had to explain to me that, first of all, we none of us are stars. And, we're trying to preserve, the integrity of what we've just done on this stage.
Oh.
So there were no blowing kisses at the end.
Oh my gosh, so awesome to learn that so young too.
And he also said, oftentimes, when we would be a little bit dramatic, that we suffer for our art was one of the things that he would say. And I understand that so completely.
Oh, wonderful. How about for you, Jack? Is there any quick piece of advice that Mr. B had told you personally that has stuck with you?
I like how you said quick piece of advice because
hey, I have a job here too.
I just think that he used to say, you deserve to give your best self. Represent your best self on stage because you deserve. That's how he would do it. He had that psychological thing because you deserve to be your best. Oh. And so I knew that he believed in me so much and I wanted to please him. And yet he would put it back on me like, you deserve to be your best self. So every performance, I say those words, you deserve to be your best self. Thanks, Mr. B. And he's there, even in the grind, 6 nights a week, every performance.
He's here right now.
He's here right now.
Yep.
And he challenges me, and that's what I wish that other people in our profession, that they could just be under the grace of Mr. Bright, for one process, one show, and their lives would be changed, and this world would be an even better place professionally and morally speaking.
Oh my gosh, I love that so much. What about for you, Danny? Any personal piece of advice that Mr. B gave you that has stuck with you?
Yeah, actually, I was thinking about it, and it was after I had graduated, and it was just Calvin, myself, and James doing stuff, and I'm like, I don't really know if this is really what I want to do, and he just sat me down and goes, "Well, you'll never know until you try, right?"
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, I guess that's a good point. So I just started doing the lighting part of it, and I'm like, this is pretty fun. Let me try sound. nah, sound's not for me. Let me try building sets. No, sets is not for me. And if I didn't try, I would have never known.
Wow, just to be
And
fearless. How wonderful.
Yeah.
yeah.
And Maddie, Matt, for with you, what about for something that Mr. B has told you that has stuck with you throughout the years?
For me, it's definitely this philosophy that success happens when preparation meets opportunity. I never realized how prepared Mr. Bright always was until I worked with other directors. And
Ooh,
suddenly it was like day one, and we're just going to stand on stage and figure this out. And I don't know what scene we're doing. And blah. Mr. Bright respected our time so much. He
yes.
valued his time, he valued our time. And that's really a tool that I've taken with me further into my career to always be prepared. I'm always ready for the next thing to happen. I'm
I love
organized.
that.
I have my time together. I respect other people's time. It's really doing your homework, taking the time to get organized and do your homework and not just wing it. And
Yep.
it was a really, really good life skill that he taught me.
I love that, and yes, again, the respect for each other, and there's just so many. I think as we're sharing these stories, we're all kind of getting that feeling back, right? I'm trying to hold back tears because just listening to how we can all still connect and how Mr. Bright's legacy lives on through us, through our work, and through this foundation. It's been so fantastic. So thank you all so much for taking your time to sit with us today and share your fantastic stories. My heart is
Thank
bursting,
you.
and I really hope we
Thank
can
you
do this
for
in
having
person
us.
soon. Yes, thank you. Thank you for
so
coming to
much.
my press conference.
Yes.
We'll see you folks later. Aloha. We love you guys.
Love you so much.
Mahalo.
See ya.
Love you guys.
All right, back to you, Devin.